Welcome to the scenario video, Linux Escalation and Pulling the Thread. Well, we are officially getting extremely close to getting access to that code vault. We are on our current Linux machine as a basic user. Our name is code user right here. I tried to cat out that etc shadow file and access is denied. We do not have privileges on this machine. But if we are able to get administrative privileges on this machine, we can escalate our privileges on the machine, data mine the machine, and try to find any links to the other systems on this network. Now, like I mentioned in the previous videos, you would look through user directories, temp, opt, anywhere on the system you could find credential material. You would look up the kernel version online, see if it's vulnerable. There's a lot of different ways you could potentially privilege escalate on a Linux machine. So let's get a little bit more direct here. I kind of have an idea of where a potential privilege escalation could be. So let's do an ls/ali/etc. We'll grep for cron. I just want to show you all these different cron folders here. Let's go ahead and look into this first one. So we'll ls/ali/etc, cron d. And we have a bunch of the different cron jobs that are set up on this host. One specifically kind of stands out to me right here, run compile. I'm looking for source code. Let's look into this one, right? So let's up arrow, we'll do a slash. Let's go ahead and list this one out so we can take a peek inside. And it looks like it's set to run every, I think that's 5 minutes, by a Linux admin, and it's doing a sudo over a file here, which is really interesting. A common way to privesc on Linux systems is trying to find any task, any script that's being run administratively, and then being able to poison that script with a basic user. It kind of relies on an administrator being lazy and just giving global permissions to a specific file, but it's not unheard of. So let's go ahead and see what the permissions are on this run compile file. And sure enough, this user is lazy. Everything's lined up really well. We can modify this file. We have read, write, execute on this file that's being executed every 5 minutes with that Linux admin account. So now our next step is to create a sliver implant, upload it to the host, and then poison that script to call our sliver implant. Now, if you're coming from Cobalt Strike like me, it's pretty cool. We can just create a C2 implant targeting a Linux distribution. So let's try this out. Let's see how this works. So I have our sliver generation command right here. Really cool, actually. You just take TACO and instead of giving it Windows, you give it Linux. And we're gonna use an HTTP implant here. If you're going for crazy stealth mode, you'd probably wanna set up a pivot listener on Brian Leon's workstation and then set up a new reverse TCP to call to that workstation. I'm gonna go quick for this example. So we're gonna do generate TACO Linux, and then we're targeting that external redirector that we set up. So we're gonna fire this off and let it compile. And our implant is created, nice and easy there. So let's copy it. And then we actually need to do an SCP up against this SSH box. Again, remember, we were executing this SSH session against our Kali box because we had that port forward set up. It goes through the whole chain, out Brian Leon, and against that Linux workstation. And we're gonna do the same thing, but we're actually gonna use SCP. So we're gonna start out with SCP TACP 7878. Remember, we put it on that alternate port. That way we can connect into our Kali box. And then we need to give it the full path to the file. So we have it right here, open fur. Then we do the name, code user. We have to connect back into ourselves to go through the tunnel. And then we are gonna put it in the /temp folder. Just remember, /temp is a great place all users can write to on Linux. However, some defensive tools do watch it a little bit closer because it can be used for this type of thing quite often. We're gonna call it code compiler to better blend in. And then the password, we need to grab the password we grabbed from earlier. Okay, cool. It started the upload. Should be good to go in a minute here. Now that our implant's on the host, we can go ahead and poison that script. So we're gonna SSH back into the host. We grab the password. Great, now we're gonna go to the temp folder. We see our code compiler right there, excellent. And then I believe it was this code snippets folder. Let's see what's in there. Run compile sh. It's echoing out this is a test. I'm just gonna put another little line in here. We're gonna go ahead and do a /temp/code compiler. Close that out. And then we'll bounce back to our sliver menu here and cross our fingers that we get a callback. And we just got our new session here. Let me do a sessions, TAC-I. We'll interact with it. Let's do a PS. Great, yep, looks good. Let's see if we can jump down into a shell here. We're in a Linux shell running as Linux admin. Let me do an ID. We have root privileges on this machine. I can do who am I? We're running as root. You just can't get better than that, right? Well, that's the end of this video. We were able to escalate our privileges via cron tab. Now that we're running as Linux admin, we can data mine this host even more. And then if you click through to the next scenario video, we're actually gonna wrap up this entire assessment and gain access to the secure code vault. But not until we set up some really cool tunnels and find some more passwords and other things. So click through to that scenario video. You're not gonna wanna miss it.